Hi, I'm Andrew Roach. Today, I'm going to show you two approaches I took to transform a data table of financials into a summarized income statement that dynamically updates to show high-level categorization of accounts, such as revenue, COGS, and operating expenses, or a more detailed view of those category sub-accounts, such as equipment sales, production parts, raw materials, salaries, rent, and so on. So let's get started.
So the first thing I'll do with this table is convert it to a structured data table, and that'll make it easier to reference my data and be more efficient with my formulas. So I'll name my table, in this case I'll name it data, and I want to get a listing of all the unique account names. So I'll use the unique function, select my data for the account field, and there we go. But it's not in the right order, so I'll apply the sort function. And I want the first column, and I want it to be ascending. Now I want my accounting period and fiscal year across the top, and so I'll use the unique function again, select my ranges, and I'm going to combine them in this case, but now I need to apply the array formula function. And to get them going across horizontally, I'll apply the transpose function. Now before we start pulling in data into this table, let's create a new column in our structured data table and call it account and AP and FY, accounting period and fiscal year. And this will be the basis of our lookup to bring in the data from our structured data table to our summary table. Now we can start bringing in our data, and we'll use an XLOOKUP, and we'll reference our account and our accounting period and fiscal year and combine those into one argument. And we'll also use our account and AP and FY field as our lookup and our amount as our return range. And so that returns it for one period. Obviously we can copy this down or across and it will populate. All right, so now we have all our data populated. So that's how we can do this using an XLOOKUP. But now we have all these formulas populating all of these cells, and that means there's a lot of ways this can go wrong. So let's see if there's a more efficient way to do this. So now we're going to use a SUMIF statement to populate this table using a single expression. And the nice thing about a SUMIF statement is that we can combine multiple fields in a single argument rather than creating a new field in our structured data table to refer to. So in this case, we're going to reference the account, accounting period, and fiscal year directly in our SUMIF statement and combine those in our criteria, and we'll use the range of the amount to summarize. And we'll set our range for our criterion so that it populates across and down, and we'll use the array formula and array constrain functions to wrap our formula. And now with a single expression, we've populated our entire data table. Now let's create a mapping to categorize our accounts so that we can summarize our accounts based on a category if we would like. Now since I'm using a SUMIF function, I can delete the contents in column A and repurpose that and populate the category based on the mapping that we just created. Next, I want to create a dropdown so I can toggle between how I see the data summarized in this table, whether that's at the account level or at the category level. So in order to make this table dynamic, we'll set the header equal to the dropdown that we've selected. And to have the row labels update accordingly, we'll use the choose column function and select the category and the account as our array. And the column we want it to choose will be based on the match function. So we'll reference our drop-down selection in J1, and we want it to make that match based on the headers in A1 and B1. We use 0 for the final argument to make sure it's an exact match. And to get rid of the duplicates, we'll wrap this in the unique function. Now when I change my drop-down selection, my row headers change as well. And to get these row headers in the proper order, let's wrap this in the sort function. And now that the row headers dynamically change as we select the drop-down, we need to change the formulas in our table so that the data also updates to reflect that as well. So we'll use an if statement within the SUMIF statement to specify that if the drop-down equals the category, then we'll use the data category field to start our first argument in the SUMIF statement. Otherwise, we'll use the account field. And we'll change our cell references to column J, so that it's picking up the dynamic row labels. And now my summary table of the income statement dynamically updates based on the dropdown that I've selected. So we can clean this up a little bit, and for column I want to include the category row labels if my dropdown for the consolidation method is account. So that way I can see the category associated with each account. So I'll set my header for column I as category if the drop down equals account, And we'll use an XLOOKUP to populate these row labels based on the account in column J to pull that data into column I. And now my table dynamically updates based on the dropdown I've selected with the appropriate data.
Now that I have this data in a summarized table that can be toggled to show the data at a category level or at a more detailed subaccount level, my next video will show how to incorporate standard derived calculations on the income statement, such as gross profit, EBITDA, and net income, in a way that generates these calculations in an automated fashion. Thanks for watching, and if you have a different way of doing this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks.